Hi guys, my name is Nonima Digela. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want us to talk about the Senzomewa case, of course, and I want us to talk about the things, how to, okay, let us talk about the controversies that could decide the Senzomewa murder trial. Because Sana Kuninge, if you've been watching the Senzomewa murder trial, you've probably noticed that something remarkable that is happening there. After years of testimony, countless witnesses from the state, heated courtroom exchanges and clashes, and thousands of pages of evidence, the debate surrounding this case continues to revolve around four major controversies. I think that is something that you have noticed. Not 20, not 50, not 100, just four. There are four pillars in this case. These are the issues that legal experts, journalists, and members of the public keep returning to because they go directly to the heart of the state case. Did the alleged hostel meeting really happen? That's the question that we already have, and it's already been answered by two witnesses that are key when it comes to the so-called hostel meeting. Can the confession evidence be trusted? Also, those were also answered. That question was answered by those two witnesses and also the other witnesses, but especially the two witnesses. Does the cell phone evidence actually prove what this prosecution says it proves? Also, that Vodacom was here to answer it for us in so many words, okay? And perhaps the biggest question of all, has the prosecution proved guilt beyond reasonable doubt? That's a big question. There is out here in the public state side versus defense side. The defense keeps saying there is nothing that has been proven. There is absolutely zero proof that puts the guys on the crime scene or inside the crime scene. The state, on the other hand, are saying yes, there is circumstantial evidence against the accused. Okay, we're going to go through all of that and then we'll take it one point at a time. So today we are breaking down each controversy, not based on social media rumors, but on what has been argued in court by both the prosecution and the defense. So let's get into it right now. Now, controversy number one, the alleged hostel meeting. Okay, let's get into that. The prosecution's theory is that several accused met at the Phosphorus hostel before Senzomewa was killed, which is called Basutu Hostel. According to the state, this meeting formed part of the planning that later resulted in the fatal robbery, so-called robbery, of course. If accepted, this allegation is extremely important because it supports the legal doctrine of common purpose. Under South African law, a person can be held criminally liable even if they did not fire the fatal shot, provided the state proves they intentionally associated themselves with the criminal enterprise. But this allegation has faced sustained attacks from the defense. The defense has repeatedly argued that no independent witness came to court to confirm the meeting took place. There is no CCTV footage placing the accused together at the hostel, no fingerprint evidence, no DNA evidence, no direct forensic evidence confirming the so-called alleged planning session. Instead, the defense argues that the allegation relies heavily on disputed statements and the state's interpretation of the evidence. And that's that. The prosecution, however, maintains that criminal conspiracies are often proved through circumstantial evidence rather than direct eyewitness testimony. Its position is that when all the evidence is viewed together, the alleged meeting forms part of the consistent narrative. This disagreement is critical because if the court accepts the hostel meeting, it strengthens the prosecution's so-called common purpose argument. If the court rejects it, one of the state's central building blocks becomes significantly weaker. Now, before we move on to the second point, second controversy, one of the other issues that we need to also highlight is that according to the state witness, which is Constable Zungu, who claimed that he was with the accused on the 26th of October 2014, the person that he traveled with from Carlton Center to the hostel says that was not how things happened, and the year was 2017, not 2014. That is a lie. So that is problem number one. Second problem is that the second person, the person that they supposedly were sitting in his house for the so-called planning, says actually they found me in that shopping complex that is nearby. I was busy and I was working. So this notion by Zungu, the constable, is not true, and it was not 2014, it was 2017. That two people now agreeing against Zungu, and these are the people that were his pillars, because he said they went to Gwabini's house, and Gwabini is like, no, that was not 2014. And some of the accused, I don't know them, but I do know accused 1, 2, 4. I don't remember if he said he knew number 5, but he definitely doesn't know accused number 3 at all. So he says, no, that is not true. Now, do you see there are two people who are like, because the Makosonge, the person that was supposedly traveled with Zungu, who claimed that he was with the accused and became the Section 204 of the state, the people are saying, the person that's supposed to travel with him is saying, no, that was 2017, number 1. Number 2, I know accused 1 and 2. I don't know the rest of them. 3, 4, and 5, I don't know them. So if he was together with them, according to Zungu, then how does he not know them? Do you understand? So those are the other factors that you need to also remember when you think about that. The controversy number 2, it's the confession evidence. Yabona, when it comes to the confession evidence, a lot is going very wrong there, and it's not even funny in Dabaya Corner. Perhaps no issue has generated more legal argument than the confession evidence. The prosecution sought to rely on statements that it says were made voluntarily and in accordance with law. If accepted, confessions evidence can carry considerable weight because it may amount to a direct admission by the accused who made it. The defense's response has been unequivocal. The accused have alleged that they were assaulted, intimidated, and coerced into making statements. Those allegations led to extensive litigation over whether the statements were made freely and voluntarily as required by law. The court heard detailed evidence during trial within a trial to determine the admissibility of the evidence. The dispute mattered before because South African law places strict safeguards around confession evidence, around all of the details, integrities when it comes to that. The court must be satisfied that any confession admitted into evidence meets the legal requirements for voluntariness. So what Judge Rata did there was something that is precautionary for himself, so that he sees right through everything what happens. I believe that's what he was doing. Even beyond admissibility, the court must still assess the reliability and weight of any confession alongside the rest of the evidence. For many observers, this issue became symbolic for the broader debate about the integrity of the investigation itself. So you see, Judge Rata really tried there to say, you know what, before I even agree to anything, let me preserve myself. I want to see something here. Controversy number 3, the cell phone evidence. Modern criminal investigations often rely heavily on digital evidence. In this trial, cell phone-related evidence became another major point of disagreement. The prosecution argued that cell phone records helped support aspects of its overall case, including communication and movement patterns relevant to the investigation. The device the issues regarding the devices, etc. There was a lot. Now, the defense did not dispute that cell phone evidence can be useful. Instead, it challenged the conclusion the state invited the court to draw from it. Defense counsel argued that cell phone records do not automatically establish who was holding a phone, who was holding a phone at a particular time or particular moment. They also maintained that the records did not conclusively place the accused inside the house where the shooting occurred and or independently prove the alleged planning meeting. This illustrates an important legal principle. Digital evidence rarely speaks for itself. Its significance depends on how it fits with the broader body of evidence. The court will ultimately decide how much weight to give the cell phone evidence when viewed alongside witnesses' testimony, forensic evidence, and the surrounding circumstances. Before we even go any further with that, the stressing part or the worrying part when it comes to the cell phone evidence, Baloyi dealt with the cell phone evidence of accused number 2 by himself. He did not call any forensic person to make sure that he nails that. He did not do that. So I don't see it helping him in any shape or form. I honestly don't. Another issue, when it comes to the cell phone evidence of accused number 3, that one was very helpful to the defense case instead of the state case. And guess what? It was the state that brought that evidence, yet it helped the defense of accused number 3. It showed the public and the court that accused number 3 was nowhere near the crime scene during the time of the crime. When the crime occurred, he was nowhere near the crime scene. So there's a lot also when it comes to that. Controversy number 4, did the state prove its case? Everything ultimately came down to one legal question. Has the prosecution proved the guilt of each accused beyond reasonable doubt? The state in its own right says they are very confident. They say yes. They are arguing that they combined the combined effect of the evidence, including witness testimony, circumstantial evidence, cell phone records, and other exhibits, establishes the accused participation in the crime, in the crimes charge. The defense says no on their other side. It argues that there are significant contradictions between witnesses, disputes over confession evidence, criticism of the investigation itself, and an absence of direct forensic evidence linking the accused to the crime. Importantly, crime courts do not decide cases based on public opinion or internet debates. They assess the admissibility or the admissible evidence presented before them and apply the legal standard of proof beyond reasonable doubt. That means the court considers not only whether individual pieces of evidence are credible, but also whether the totality of the evidence supports the prosecution's case. One reason the Senzo Meyiwa Mera trial continues to command national attention is that it raises fundamental questions about criminal investigation, evidentiary standards, and administration of justice. The alleged hostile meeting, the confession evidence, the cell phone data, and overall burden of proof are not simply talking points. They are issues the court must carefully evaluate in reaching its verdict. Whatever the outcome, the judge will be scrutinized not only for its conclusion, the judgment will be scrutinized not only for its conclusion, but also for the legal reasoning that supports them. As always, please remember that allegations made during criminal trial remain subject to judicial determination until the court delivers its final judgment. So, what are your thoughts when it comes to this? What do you think? Which of these 4 controversies do you believe will have the greatest impact on the final judgment of Judge Rata Mokgoatlheng? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comment section below. If you enjoy balanced legal analysis of the South Africa's biggest criminal case, subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of our videos and our next deep dive when it comes to the Senzo Meyiwa case. And I'll see you on our next video. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.